So, you think you know the Gen 6 legendary trio, do you? XYZ, Norse inspirations and all? But what if I told you that's wrong? Or at least, that's not all. This is the real origin of Xerneas, Yveltal, and Zygarde. Welcome. We have much to discuss. And before getting right into it, let's first cover what you may already know, as it's been quite some time since the release of Pokemon X and Y. 6 years, in fact. Many know of the Norse inspirations of these Pokemon, and to find the specifics, we need to only look at the world tree Yggdrasil. This tree, Yggdrasil, also known as the World Tree or the Tree of Life, is the foundation of Norse myth and cosmology, as it connects the 9 worlds. But that does not mean beings cannot exist between the worlds. This is where we will find our origins. There are quite a few horned and hoofed creatures residing all around the tree, such as the goat Heidrun and the hart, Xerneas, who graze at its foliage. That hart, or deer specifically, is said to have glowing antlers that drip dew with such abundance that it fills the rivers, bringing life and rejuvenation to the land. And that by itself serves as an excellent basis for the Pokemon of life, Xerneas. But there is even more to be seen. All around the base of the World Tree there are 4 stags, which are male deer. They are Dowin, Dvalin, Dunir, and Durothroar. All of them reach up and eat the branches of the tree. Dvalin specifically, who is also a dwarf, because it's complicated, is said to be the dormant one, or the one slumbering, which may have inspired Xerneas lying dormant in the shape of a tree until it is actively awakened. There are a number of theories regarding the symbolic meaning of these deer. Some attribute them to represent the winds, or the 4 cardinal directions, which we will speak more of later. But another theory is that these 4 stags were added into the late stages of Norse mythology, and originally it was one great stag, which may point right back to Xerneas, the deer of glowing antlers and life-bringing abilities. But what then of the other 2 Pokemon, Yveltal and Zygarde? Well, let's look at Zygarde next and find out. Deep beneath the land where the stag resides, among the roots of the World Tree, there is a serpentine dragon known as Nidhogg, which sustains itself by gnawing at the roots of the tree, as well as chewing up the corpses of the inhabitants of Nastrond, the part of the world hell for the worst of the worst. Those guilty of such atrocities such as murder, adultery, and worst of all, oath-breaking. Crushing these evildoers may, in a way, keep those still alive in Midgard, Earth, from doing such heinous acts, similar to Christianity's burning in hell. This fear of punishment after death, in a way, helped sustain order amongst society, and Zygarde, being the Pokemon of order, may pull from this very aspect. Though a prevalent theme in Norse mythology is renewal, death, and rebirth. So some have theorized that by chewing on the corpses but not consuming them, it sheds the corpses to begin life anew. Sin and punishment, followed by redemption. Order. It is also worth noting that the arrival of Nidhogg heralds Ragnarok, Norse Armageddon, which, in a way, was Lysander's plan in the anime, to use Zygarde to burn Kalos to the ground, ending it. But there's more to Zygarde than just its 50% snake form, isn't there? The individual cells are simply that. They resemble cells, perhaps like Euglena, but then its 10%, 50%, and 100% forms are easily inspired from the 3 children of Loki and Angerboda. The first is FENRIR, the giant wolf, clearly represented by 10% Zygarde being a dog, and it should be noted that FENRIR is bound, but when Ragnarok comes around it will break free and kill Odin, though it will be later struck down. Next is JÖRMUNGANDR, the World Serpent. While different from Nidhogg, it too works as another inspiration to 50% Zygarde. It is a sea serpent so massive, it's wrapped itself around the entire world and bit down onto its own tail like the Ouroboros. And it is said that Ragnarok will begin the moment it lets go. And during it, it is prophesied that it will kill Thor with its poison, though only after being killed by Thor itself. Lastly is Hel, their giantess daughter and ruler of the realm of the same name, the one where Nidhogg chews upon evil corpses. Though she does not rule Hel by choice, rather she is bound there through force. But like Fenrir, will break free during Ragnarok. These three clearly match the forms of Zygarde in shape, though their roles are loose at best. One could see the form of the Ouroboros taken by Jormungandr and apply that to Zygarde easily. After all, in alchemy and Gnosticism, the Ouroboros' symbolism is all is one, or everything is in order. Then Hel, being the ruler of the underworld where Nidhogg does its thing, is all underground, and that may point towards the ground typing of Zygarde. And then Fenrir's a dog. So overall, the Norse inspiration of these two still works well. Xerneas is definitely Norse primarily, and Zygarde and its forms, mostly. But now, how about Yveltal? High above the stags and Nidhogg, up in the canopy of Yggdrasil, there resides an eagle. This great eagle goes unnamed, though its companion, a hawk that sits between its eyes, is known as Vedrfolnir. This eagle knows many things, as it is wise and gossips with Nidhogg about all of the goings-on. And that is where our story ends. So, a smart bird equals Yveltal, the Pokemon of destruction known for absorbing the life force of all of those around it. No. Though there's also HRÆSVELGR, which translates to Corpse Swallower. And he's a giant that can transform into an eagle, one that sits at the northern edge of the heavens and causes wind to blow when it beats its wings. So that's something. Maybe if you mix the two birds? It's still a bit weak, though. He's known more so as the Wind Giant, not a giant of death, and all the giants eat humans, and have names that insinuate violent things, so I guess this comes down to... I guess that's the inspiration, I suppose? But I'm never quite happy with that. That can't be it! While there are times Game Freak is lazy in its design, when it comes to the legendary Pokemon, they are often deep and pull from many inspirational sources at once. So, let's go over two more inspirations to get the whole picture. X, Y, Z. Why X and Y was a question many threw around when Pokemon X and Y were announced. Up until that point, every Pokemon game was either a color or a gemstone that insinuated a color. But X and Y? Letters? Many joked about chromosomes for a while, but then we got to see the legendary Pokemon, and the pieces started falling into place. Yveltal's whole body is shaped like a Y, as are its talons, and Xerneas' body makes an X and has X eyes, and several X's within its antlers. And then, 50% Zygarde, which was the only form we had at the time, when in its default pose is shaped like a Z. So many expected a third version, a Pokemon Z, to happen, but it never did. Regardless of this, the second half of the Gen 6 anime was named Pokemon XYZ. This led many to theorize that this was going to be the end of an era for Ash and the anime. XYZ certainly insinuated the end of something. And in a way it was. The following anime series would take a completely different direction, both in story and art design, but for all intensive purposes, this wasn't really an end much at all. XYZ then may simply refer to the fact that Pokemon X and Y were the first mainline Pokemon games in 3D, as they were on the 3DS after all. And in mathematics, and video game modeling for that matter, you use a 3-axis system to represent the 3 dimensions. The x-axis is how far something moves left or right, horizontally. The y-axis is how high or low it is vertically, and the z-axis is how near or far something is. X, Y, Z on the 3DS. And you can take this axis information and apply it to the Pokemon as well. The stags around the Norse Tree of Life walk around on the ground, X, whereas the eagle flies up and down, Y. when on a 2D diagram of the tree, they are essentially the X and Y axes. But then here comes Zygarde, the Z axis? Near or far? Doesn't really fit. Maybe that's why they canceled Pokemon Z. We couldn't come up with lore. But what if I told you now that these directional inspirations lead us to a whole new set of beliefs, a whole new trio of gods? And for that, we look to Hinduism and the Trimurti, the triple deity of supreme divinity, the three dominant gods in Hinduism: Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma. Now, being humanoid in nature, you might not see the connection right away, but what we have here is the god of life and creation, the god of destruction, and the god of maintenance and order. Being the Pokemon of destruction rather than of death may help with this connection, as it's the same word used to describe Shiva: destruction. And there are even more connections to make. Like how Xerneas may be a single form of the 4 stags around Yggdrasil, thus its 4 colored antlers, it may also pull then from the 4 heads of Brahma. And most of all, how Vishnu has several snake heads behind his own head. Most commonly, 5. And looking at 50% Zygarde, what else could these 5 similar-looking, scaly heads behind it be? Plus, there is complete Zygarde. The previous main head becomes the chest face, and the 5 flat heads behind 50% Zygarde's head become a humanoid head and 4 long snake heads. You can more easily tell that they are heads by the way they open their mouths when attacking. And not only this, but in Hinduism, there are many gods who can descend to Earth in the form of an avatar, the material, physical appearance of a deity on Earth. And no other god is more associated with them, or has as many, as Vishnu. Replace avatar with form, and you'll see what I'm getting at. So the Hindu god of maintenance and order, the Pokemon of order, the snake heads and many forms alone makes it clear to see. And this goes deeper too. Brahma creates life, Shiva destroys, and Vishnu maintains the balance between the two, as too much of one or the other is a danger to the whole world, to the ecosystem. Similarly, Zygarde, the guardian of the ecosystem, must maintain balance between the two, but cannot, and will not, dominate or take over the roles of the other two. Being fairy makes Xerneas immune to Zygarde's dragon typing, and being flying makes Yveltal immune to Zygarde's ground typing, in a way that symbolizes how challenging that balancing act is, as both life and death have power over the preserver. Thus, the preserver needs more power overall to preserve it. This balance is often mentioned in the teachings of the Trimurti, and is why Vishnu is often depicted between the other two, preserving. And it still goes deeper. We can actually look back at the directions again. As in Hinduism, there are gods of directions: north, south, east, west, northwest, southwest, etc. And Vishnu just so happens to be one of them, the god of Nadir, which is the downwards direction, directly below an observer. And what better direction would fit Nidhogg, who resides at the lowest point of Yggdrasil? It really does all come together. One issue I often see in the Pokemon fandom is the inability of some to see or accept the idea that Pokemon can have multiple inspirational sources. Sure, most Pokemon are just one thing, maybe with a small element or two from another, but some are such cultural, biological, and historical hodgepodges that things get too complicated and people refuse to see it. A brief example is the Fire Zodiac starter theory that I butchered the name of. Many see Fennekin as a fox because it is one, but because it's a fox, it's not a dog. So the theory is wrong. Whereas others see the Zodiac loosely. It doesn't mean specifically a domesticated dog, it means dog-like, which foxes are. Because Game Freak is allowed to take creative liberties, as they do that all the time. What the heck is Nidoking? Same goes for Cyndaquil. It's not a rat, it's a mouse. Therefore, the theory is wrong. Even though in Japanese there's no word that means one or the other, they are both the same in Japanese. It's rat-like, not rat, period. And this may be the case again. The Norse mythology theory popped up first in the Western fandom, and it has a good bit of evidence for it. Plus, it's easier for us Westerners to understand. So even if it doesn't fully explain everything, we accept it. It's a lot easier than having to learn about another Eastern religion. So, some may not accept anything else as an answer. But while the Hindu inspiration fills in the blanks, by itself, it also doesn't tell the full story. But Game Freak doesn't have to pick one thing and base a Pokemon on it. Pokemon is its own world that pulls some inspiration from ours, and as such, these Pokemon can easily be Norse, and Hindu, and based on 3D spatial directions. And that's just awesome. And with that, we've finished Fairy Month. But if you're interested in more fairy-type content, my pal Hoops and Hip Hop just posted a video about 5 fairy-type Pokemon theories. So, click here to check that out. And until next time, never stop using your noggin.